So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, depending on where you are, and maybe even good night. Thank you for coming to this webinar session brought to you by BELTA and with the support of Heike Philp of Let's Talk Online. My name is James Taylor, and I'm the president of BELTA, the Belgian English Language Teachers Association. And our aim is to encourage the professional development of our Belgian teachers through bringing English language teachers, English language professionals together to discuss the things that matter to them. We also want to connect Belgian teachers to the wider world of ELTs, and that's why we offer this webinar series where we can bring our members together with teachers from around the world to watch presentations from international speakers. So hello to all of our members and those of you joining us from elsewhere. In this month's webinar, we are joined by Chuck Sandy, who will be taking a deep look at the soul of a teacher, and by reflecting on his own growth as an educator and as a person, he will encourage us to seek our own way to move forward. Chuck is a teacher, teacher trainer, author, and educational activist with over 30 years experience in the field. His many publications include the Passages and Connect series from Cambridge University Press, the Active Skills for Communication series from Senage, and English for Teachers from ITDI. He is a frequent presenter at conferences and workshops around the world and is a co-founder and director of International Teacher Development Institute, ITDI. He has also worked to spread Design for Change, a global movement that empowers children to be the change they wish to see in the world, across the world. On a personal level, I have seen how Chuck has touched the lives of literally thousands of teachers across the world with his message of reflection and hope. I consider myself lucky to be one of the many people who think of him as a mentor, and he has offered me nothing but encouragement and positivity. I'm grateful to him for that, and I'm grateful to him for staying up late in his home in Japan to speak to us today. It's my pleasure to introduce Chuck Sandy. Chuck, it's all yours.
Thank you, James. In addition to all that, I'm just one of you, a teacher, and I've been stepping back very far this past year, and as some of you know, I'm no longer teaching at the university I used to teach at, and I'm doing lots of reflecting these days about myself and my growth and what it means to be a teacher, and really recovering myself from lots of different things in my life. So as I asked during the warm-up, I'd like you to have a look at this picture of trees and to think of these trees as teachers in their career. And I'd like you to think about yourself for a moment and think about where you are in this picture. Which tree are you? Are you one of the trees that are standing out in the front, tall, as maybe leading this group? Are you one of the smaller trees kind of hiding in the back? Are you way down there where no one really can see you? Have you fallen down somewhere? And if you want to, you can type in where you are in the picture in your career. Then I'll tell you where I am. Go ahead if you'd like to. Which tree are you? I came across a book several years ago called The Lives of Teachers, which is really a longitudinal study of teachers' careers over a period of years. And one of the interesting things is that about every 5 years, teachers sort of crash and burn and fall down and need to reinvent themselves. We're on a sort of a 5-year cycle of going up and down. And I have recently come out of the bottom of one of those 5-year cycles. I've been a teacher for about 30 years. And I can verify that every once in a while, I fall down and need to pick myself up in some way. And in the course of my career, I have been all of these trees. I've been up front, I've been small, I've been In the back, I've been cut down a tree peeking around the corner of the picture. All right, that's nice. Branching out, that's good. Yeah, so everybody can kind of see where they might be in the picture. I, not too long ago, was one of those old growth trees that kind of got cut down and really needed to, in this past year, really reinvent myself. I was a university teacher for almost 20 years at Chiba University, and I was at a job that for many years I loved doing, and then it just wasn't fun anymore because of a lot of different things, which I won't go into right now. But it stopped being fun. I stopped enjoying being there, and it wasn't the students, it wasn't the teaching, it was colleagues and pressure, and the university self-changing, and maybe in some ways I had lost interest in becoming a good employee of that school. So I got cut down from that. And in addition to that happening to me, I had a lot of issues, a lot of things going on in my life on a personal level, and also in terms of my health. So I really, at some point in the past year, hit bottom and had to rethink just about everything. And one of the things I've been doing in this process is just sort of figuring it out. And some of you may have seen me use a quote by Parker Palmer. I've used it a couple of times. It's about teachers in our lives. And it goes something like, if we are going to make progress and grow as teachers, we have to do something that's alien to academic culture. We have to talk to each other about our inner lives. And so that's what I'm going to do with you this evening, to share a little bit about what's been happening with me and some of the things I've learned. And the title of the talk is, I can't remember the exact order, but it's Uncovering, Recovering, and Discovering, or Recovering, Discovering, and Uncovering the teacher you are. But when I've been recovering, and in the process of recovering, learning some things, discovering some new things about myself as a teacher, and developing a way forward. So I'd like to share some of that with you. And I'd like to start with a poem. Oops, I'm going backwards. This is a poem by Thomas Tranströmer, a Swedish poet. And I'll read that to you. I have been walking for a long time on the frozen Östergötland fields. I have not seen a single person. In other parts of the world, there are people who are born, live, and die in a perpetual crowd. To be always visible, to live in a swarm of eyes, a special expression must develop. Face coated with clay. The murmuring rises and falls while they divide up amongst themselves the sky, the shadow, the sand grains. I must be alone 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening without a program. Everyone is queuing for everyone else, many one. I see some people typing over there that they can't hear. Is that true? Are you able to hear or no? If you can't hear, I need to type it over here. Can everyone hear? Okay. Some of you may be having sound problems. If you are, you might need to log out and log back in again. This poem is one I've known for a while, and it came back to me actually just today as I was looking through some poetry to share with you. And it's about the many and the one. And as teachers, we need to work with the many. And in the process of working with the many, we sometimes forget to focus on the one, which is us, which is ourselves. And we run low on energy. And I discovered this past year that I had become too visible, really, and was almost everywhere all at once, and really needed to step back. And this is going to sound a bit blasphemous, facing many of you who are in my PLN, but I needed to silence the PLN and silence the noise and get back to really figure out who I am and what it means for me to be a teacher. So I did step back and step back almost completely until now. I've been out a couple of times, but here I am tonight. Whoops. I've been doing a lot of reading, and I'm going to refer to some of the things I've been reading this past year. And one of the things has been Haruki Murakami, a Japanese writer. This is about kids, but it could also be about teachers. And so, although it says adults constantly raise the bar on smart children, I'm going to replace the word children with teachers. And I'm going to replace the word adults with school systems and supervisors. So school systems and supervisors constantly raise the bar on smart teachers, precisely because they're able to handle it. The teachers get overwhelmed by the tasks in front of them and gradually lose the sort of openness and sense of accomplishment they innately have. When they're treated like that, teachers start to crawl inside a shell and keep everything inside. It takes a lot of time and effort to get them to open up again. So as I was saying, I was one of those trees that have been cut, were knocked down, fell down, and was working in the school system that was very, very difficult to be a part of. And so this quote spoke to me, and I've been, when we're faced a lot of pressure in school systems and in our professional life, I mean, we really have two possibilities. One is to reach out, which is what we all do all the time in our PLNs, and the other is to retreat. And one of the things I'm finding is that there really does need to be a very good balance in that. I was out for a walk today, and I came across this tree here, which is a perfectly good tree, as you can see. Yet it somehow fell over. It cracked in the middle. And I wish you could see just a little more of the picture, but this tree is alive and it's full of leaves, and something's happened to it. And there are a lot of things in a teacher's life that can knock a teacher out of balance. And when that happens, we need to find some ways to heal ourselves and or to heal colleagues that have fallen and need to pick themselves up. Carlos Castaneda says we either make ourselves miserable or we make ourselves strong. The amount of work is the same. I spent some time this year and last year as this tree who'd fallen down. And I spent some time focusing on being miserable until I realized that Carlos Castaneda is right, that it's the same energy to either pick yourself up and make yourself strong, or to just continue to be miserable. I chose being strong, and it's taken some effort. So if you are a colleague is in the process of falling down or has fallen, my first bit of advice really is just think about this and pick yourself up. And if the author of the book, The Lives of Teacher, is correct, and he seems to be correct based on all the research he's done, then this is going to happen. If it hasn't happened yet, that there's going to be a point in your teaching career when you will fall and crash, and you'll need to pick yourself up and get strong again. My first bit of advice is not to give up, because we as human beings tend to, for a while, to give up. But a quote that's meant something to me this past year is from Anne Lamott, a writer who I like very much, who says that hope begins in the dark, the stubborn hope that if you just show up and try to do the right thing, the dawn will come. You wait and watch and work and you don't give up. Yet at the same time, we're often in our career faced with choices, whether we stay at a job or leave it, whether we continue to be the kind of teacher that we were or work to become a different teacher. And, at that point, it's incredibly important to make the right choice, the right decision. Cheryl Strayed, an author who I've been reading a lot, who I listed her book in the little notes section down there, a book called Wild. Says, don't surrender all your joy for an idea you used to have about yourself but isn't true anymore. I've been talking about change for 30 years, but it's probably only in the last year or two, especially in this past year, that I've really focused on changing myself. And the quote that I had in my abstract from Henry Newen that says, you don't think your way into a new kind of living, you live your way into a new kind of thinking, is something I've been finding very, very true. I was in a bookstore in Seattle, and I just opened up a notebook, and someone had written these words in there. Those are my fingers. It says, who knew this type of choice could exist? A bunch of years ago, I was sitting with a supervisor of mine, and I was having a dilemma about what I should do at my job. She said, Chuck, there's always more than two choices. And I was thinking, quit or stay, quit or stay, quit or stay. Well, it took me a bunch of years to figure out that there are a bunch of choices available to us if we're willing to step back far enough and look at what those choices are. It's never just this or that. There's always some other things that if we're willing to step back and look and see what the other possibilities are in a circle of possibility, a lot of things will open up for us. And we don't have to hold on to ideas of who we are or who we were. We don't have to still be the teacher we were. We can make a change and we can be different. This is one of the things I've been discovering about myself as a teacher and as a person this year. But first, you got to choose a direction. This is a very famous quote. It's actually from the Bible, from the book of Jeremiah. And it's a quote that I've liked for a long time. And this morning, I just opened up a book, and there it was again. Stand at the crossroads and look, ask for the ancient path, ask where the good way is, and walk in it. This is a picture from today, actually. I was up on a mountain not too far from here. There were several paths that I could have taken, and I made a choice. And yes, we need to always ask what the right path is. Ask for the ancient path. Ask what the good way is. And then once you find it, start walking in it, even if it's really scary. But you have to be on the right path. You know, if we go back to this, there's a couple of paths here today. One of them was 630 meters up a mountain that I really wasn't ready to climb today. And I've been on some paths in the mountains these past months that were not easy. I've been in a place in my university which became quite difficult. Carlos Castaneda says the question that we always have to ask ourselves, does this path have a heart? If the answer is no, you will know it, and then you must choose another path. Makes sense, right? Well, the trouble is that nobody asks the question, and when a man or a woman finally realizes that he or she has taken a path without a heart, the path is ready to kill us. At that point, very few can stop to deliberate and leave the path. A path without a heart is never enjoyable, and you have to work hard even to take it. On the other hand, a path with heart is easy. It does not make you work at liking it. Makes good sense, right? Well, there's an easy path that I was on today from today's walk. But I was on a heartless path for quite a number of years, and at my university and in other aspects of my life. But I was afraid to ask the question, afraid to make the jump. I was afraid to give up my salary at the university, even though almost literally, the path did kill me. With a heart attack, I now have a couple of stents in my heart. I've fallen down a couple of times, and a lot of it was due to being on a very difficult path that was increasingly hard to like. Fortunately, I started to ask the question before it did kill me and got off. So it makes common sense. I mean, it is common sense, and it's not really rocket science at all. But I think at various points in our careers as teachers, we need to step back and ask ourselves, is where I'm at right now, is where I'm headed, am I on the right path or the wrong path? And be willing at times to step off and take another direction and to see where that leads. And that's what I've been doing this year. And I'm on a great path right now, really enjoying every day before you start worrying about me. I'm doing great, and this is the easy path that I'm on right now. But I've really discovered that retreat is necessary sometimes. And one of the things I've been learning is that we can be online all the time. We can try to be everything to everybody, and it can be exhausting, and it can be actually debilitating. So that there needs to be a time for silence. This quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, from the book Life Together, sort of sums it up. Let him who cannot be alone beware of community. Let him who is not in community beware of being alone. Each by itself has profound perils and pitfalls. One who wants fellowship without solitude plunges into the void of words and feelings, and the one who seeks solitude without fellowship perishes in the abyss of vanity, self-infatuation, and despair. Wow. It's a pretty heavy quote. This is me stepping out of my solitude earlier this summer with Barbara Hoskins Sakamoto and Marco Brazil, with a group of IETC teachers, mostly Filipino teachers in Tokyo. But I had become so tired, really, and so frazzled in many ways that for several months I just really needed to step back. And I'm coming back out again, as you can see me here in my room. But advice really is, don't be afraid to retreat when you need to retreat. I've been away from Facebook and Twitter almost almost for 3 months now, and people have not disappeared or forgotten. I see many great people have showed up tonight. You don't have to be afraid of going away for a little bit to take good care of yourself and to learn what it means to be in solitude. You don't want to go back too far into solitude so that where you have absolutely no connections at all, because that's a dangerous place to be, as Bonhoeffer points out. But there does need to be this balance in our teaching lives so that we can remain strong, and so we don't become one of these trees that fall down, so that we can pick ourselves back up again. So retreat when you need to retreat. And be alone sometimes. There's a picture there. I can't really remember what it is. I think it's me with a shadow if it comes up sometime. But be alone. Don't be afraid to be with yourself and learn who you are, really, as a teacher, as a person. Cheryl Strayed writes, alone had always felt like an actual place to me, as if it weren't a state of being, but rather a room I could retreat to be who I really was. If you go back to that poem that I read at the beginning, you know, it's about authenticity. It's about being true to yourself. It's about really understanding who you are and gaining the strength. But if you're willing to be alone and be alone in solitude sometimes, and to be in that place that's almost like a room, this is where I find the heart of the teacher really exists, the power of teaching. And again, about myself, I had reached a place where I was making so much noise and involved in so many things that I almost forgotten what it was like to be alone. And getting back there these past months has really helped me to understand and get ready again to be back in the classroom. I'm not teaching right now. I'm not in a class, but I don't have a class that I teach on a regular basis, but I'm teaching myself. So we often are in a situation in our careers and in our lives where we just need to make a really huge change, and we don't know how to start or where to begin. Here's John Fanslow, a man I absolutely love, and one of my favorite teachers from way back. I never actually had a class with John, but I first met him probably 25 years ago, 26 years ago, when his book Breaking Rules first came out. And it was a book that I picked up, and I really loved the kind of things that John was saying about making, if you want to make changes in your teaching, and by extension in your life, you need to start with making very small changes, not big changes, So we all know that if we say, okay, tomorrow morning I'm going to start on this diet and I'm going to lose 20 kilograms and I'm going to just completely change everything. Well, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't happen. But if we look at small changes in the classroom, if we look at small changes in our lives, then change really does become possible. I read some research not too long ago, or heard it on NPR about small changes. And I was telling John about this. Is a picture of John and I in Hokkaido last week, where we went up to give a presentation at the Hokkaido conference, which was great. I got to spend some time with John. One of the great things of my life really is, and now after 25 years, counting John as not only one of my best and most favorite teachers, but as a friend as well, and count that. So we were up there, and we were talking about change. And I was telling John about this research I'd read or heard. If you want to, for example, start waking up an hour earlier than you normally do, the absolutely wrong thing to do is to set your clock an hour earlier. It will work once, it might even work twice, but by the third or the fourth day, you'll be back and maybe even sleeping later. But If you set your alarm clock back by 1 minute a day for 60 days, this small change, just a little bit every day, just one single minute, it feels like nothing. And at the end of 60 days, you are now waking up an hour earlier. So with this in mind, I set out to make some changes in my life and the way I teach, and not really setting my clock back a minute every day, but making a lot of other small changes. This is fabulous advice, really, and it comes right from John Fanslow himself. If you want to make a change in your teaching, if you want to make a change in your life, make some small changes and see what happens. Yes, Alexander, it's exactly the 1% solution. Exactly. And if you want to change your teaching, back to the quote by Henry Noonan, if you want to change your life, it's not thinking your way into doing it, it's actually doing it. You need to teach yourself first. Paulo Coelho in the Pilgrimage writes that teaching is really only demonstrating that it, meaning anything, is possible. Learning is making it possible for yourself. Excuse me. So before we go about teaching anything, I think we really need to learn it ourselves. And many of my teachers over the years have told me, and I've read as well, that we end up teaching what we need to learn. I know we're all language teachers and we go into class and we're teaching language, but we're also teaching behaviors. We're teaching um, communication. We're teaching a lot of different things, and we wind up all the time teaching what it is we need to learn ourselves. So with this in mind, I set out on a program of change to change myself in some small ways. And I found a practice. One of the great books I read um, was by Natalie Goldberg, whose quote, sorry, whose website is down there. Natalie Goldberg is a writing teacher and guru, actually. And she comes from a Zen Buddhist perspective. And she's got there's a couple of very interesting books. The one I was reading most recently is called The True Secret of Writing. You actually could change the title into The True Secret of Teaching, because everything I read in this book about writing is actually applicable about teaching and learning. She advocates in her workshops and in her books, and I'd like to advocate to you that one of the best ways to begin making a change is not only by starting small, but by finding a practice that you can do. And by doing it almost religiously every day without fail. What is a practice? Well, for me, it's been walking. And for all these days, particularly for the first 40 days, I was making no matter how I felt, no matter what the weather was like, I had made a promise to myself that I was going to walk at least 5 kilometers a day. I'm now down to 3 kilometers a day right now, but there's still this practice that I've developed, and it's created a lot of changes. And to some of you who know me from Facebook, all of you, mostly I think, know that I was for 40 days on a local pilgrimage, really inspired by Vladka, who did the Camino, 900 kilometers across Spain mostly. But I didn't go anywhere. I just needed to make some changes in my life and in my teaching. And so I found a practice. A practice for me was walking. But a practice for you can be anything. And Natalie Goldberg recommends things like, just sitting for 5 minutes a day, or, writing a page in a journal every day. Whatever the practice is, find it and do it. So back to the 40 days, though. 40 is not an arbitrary number. 40 in lots of different traditions, sacred traditions mostly, is the time it takes to transform, the time it takes to transform yourself or a situation. So Natalie recommends a practice, the practice being something you choose to do on a regular basis with no vision of an outcome. The aim is not improvement, not getting somewhere. You do it because you do it. You show up whether you want to or not. So that's a practice. And I found some incredible power in this. Getting my iPad open here to read a little bit more for you. But she goes on to say that this practice needs to be realistic. It needs to be something possible. And she says that this continual practice expresses your true determination, signals to your unconscious, to your deep resistance that you mean business. Then your resistance roars louder and you roar back. Over time, the practice kicks in that strong motor, that deep impersonal life force within you. It reinforces and supports your yes to life for no reason, not because you were good or bad or worthy or kind or successful, but because, like a blade of grass or thunder or a cloud, you are alive. And I found this to be absolutely true in the past months as I've done my walking practice every day. Practice, show up, track. And the very reason for the first 40 days I was making a daily post on Facebook was to keep myself honest, so that I was actually showing up and doing it every day. But I found about 10 days, maybe 12 days into this process, some things started to change inside me that I didn't even realize were happening. And it wasn't a matter, a lot of you who know me can see that I'm much thinner than I used to be. But a lot of other changes started taking place as well, and including a lot of different learning that happened along the way. And somehow, in the midst of all this, I started to pick myself up and become a tree again. Tree standing taller. So this practice, this setting a goal, this just showing up, and this goes back to that early quote I had from Annie Lamott. You show up, you hope for the best. You're not trying to lose weight. You're not trying to get better at any particular thing. You're just doing something in order to see what it's a practice. And you track it. You track it. And you be honest with yourself about it along the way. And in the process of doing this, you clear your head. I came across, I was back recently in New York State, and this is a picture of my father and I out for a walk on his 82nd birthday. He just turned 82, and I was able to fly back and spend the day with him, and we went out for a walk. And he said this very thing to me again, that he had written on this piece of paper, I'm going to show you, and gave it to me a bunch of years ago when I was in university. It says it's exactly the same words. And it's very simple. Your mind can only hold one thought at a time. Make it a positive and constructive one. Absolutely, there's that paper again. Absolutely simple advice. but I found that the practice of walking, of doing something every single day for no reason except to prove to myself that I was alive and doing and making some changes in myself that helped me to really clear my head. And so this is advice if you are in a situation, or advice that you might give to somebody who needs it. To start a practice, first to pick yourself up, to reiterate a bit, to find a practice to do it, and by doing so, start clearing your head of negativity, of things that don't matter, and focusing on what does in the process of being alone and then in community as well, and finding that balance. On my walk today, I took this picture. The advice is really just to change your view of what you look at, what you see, and this is almost like a picture of those trees. This is down by the river, below the mountain, below my house, and about 2 or 3 kilometers away. And over on the left in the picture, you can see an abandoned hotel. When I first moved to this area, that was a thriving um, ryokan, or Japanese hot springs along a river. And it since went out of business, and it's been abandoned. There's been a fire there. You can see the building it's Jokoji. Yoshie knows that. Yoshie is a local person. It's Jokoji, yeah. In the middle, there's a building. I don't even know what it was at one point. It's just completely trashed. And I don't know why, but in my previous state, when I was out for a walk, I'd always look at this hotel. I'd always see this particular view. And there's nothing inspiring about it at all. And I'd have to walk by it, and it's a little scary, actually. And there are people living in there, and it's just not a very nice thing. But I started walking in a different direction, and I found a different view. And it's just a matter of looking this direction instead of this direction. And if I look in the opposite direction, there's a train station that can get me somewhere. There is this lovely mountain, and if you can see more of the picture, it goes off into a beautiful river view. So I can either look at this and see this as my view, or I can change my perspective just a little bit and see what's really there. What's really there is not just this, but also this. And again, back to the quote from my father, you can only keep one thought in your head at a time. Why focus on this, the destruction of a career, of a life, of whatever, when you can focus on this, a train station that's going to take you somewhere, a place that's going to get you farther and away. They're both there at the same time, and what we choose to focus on makes a big difference. The idea of building a house comes from Cheryl Strayed again, and I highly recommend the book Wild to you, and another book of advice that she's written called Tiny Beautiful Things. Just an incredible book where people write in asking for advice about their life, and she's an incredible writer with fabulous answers and insight. And she talks about building the house, because the house really, what is the house? The house is our body. The house is the body that we carry around, that houses us. And I hadn't realized until I had a heart attack and fell down and got quite sick and had some other disasters befall me. I hadn't realized that I'm not immortal, that I really do need to take good care of the house. And again, a quote showing that there is always a choice here, that you can choose between despair and energy. John Keats chooses the latter, energy, and so do I. And I found now, for the first 40 days I was out walking, I was just walking. I was just, the idea was just to do it, to get my 5 kilometers in, and to, just to do it, to show up, to do the practice. And now I found that I got this app on my phone, my iPhone, which is absolutely great. It's called Strata, and you can see some screenshots down here. It uses GPS, and I'm tracking myself. I'm building the house. I'm trying to get faster and stronger all the time. And I know you're thinking, well, what does this have to do with teaching? Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But I found that rebuilding the house of my body has been an incredibly necessary process for me to get back to being a teacher. The app is called Strata. Um, I'll write it in here, S Strata. It's really nice. And it shows you your personal best. And it's very motivating. All of you know that I'm very interested in motivation. And I found that having this app measuring my time, my distance, and my speed, and showing where I've gone, and it measures my personal bests on different routes. It's been very, very motivating. And another thing that's kind of kept me honest, because I look at my phone, it's got the whole feed down it, and I say, oh, I don't want to miss today, so I'm going to get out there and do something. So, build the house. Build the house, which is your body, and maybe it sounds like really simplistic advice, but teaching takes energy. Teaching takes a lot of energy, and my grandmother was a third grade teacher in a one-room schoolhouse. She started in a one-room schoolhouse. She was a third grade teacher throughout her life, and I remember one time I was staying with her when I was about 16. She came home from a day of teaching, and she said, she was also a farmer. She said, Chuck, teaching children is more work than planting potatoes. It's more exhausting than planting potatoes. And at 16, I just didn't really understand what she meant at all, because I wasn't a farmer and I had not yet become a teacher. But I thought of this over the years when I teach several classes in a row. It is exhausting. And if we don't take care of our bodies and of our health and of our energy levels, I don't think it's possible really to be an effective teacher. It took me almost 55 years to learn this, but I'm glad I did. I came across a place, and this is a panorama shot using my iPhone from today. It's the same path going forward and going backwards on Jokoji Mountain that Yoshie knows. And on any particular day, we wake up and we started to make changes in our lives and changes in the way we teach. There is there's the temptation to sleep in, the temptation to tell ourselves it doesn't matter, nobody will know. But honesty is important in all aspects. Honesty to other people, but honesty to ourselves is incredibly important too. We can't allow ourselves to backslide once we decide to start a practice and to make some changes and to move forward. Just don't go backwards. Don't allow yourself to go backwards. Once you get on the make a choice and get on the right path and are doing things that are good for you, don't allow yourself to go back in the opposite direction. Back to energy, then. I think that slide was a bit out of place. I'm sorry for that. But back to energy. This is from Canadian writer Robertson Davies, and I've liked this quote for a while. He says, to instruct calls for energy, and to remain almost silent but watchful and helpful while students instruct themselves calls for even greater energy. To see someone fall which will teach him not to fall again when a word from you would keep him on his feet, but ignorant of an important danger is one of the tasks of the teacher that calls for a special energy because holding in is more demanding than crying out. Holding in is more demanding than crying out. All of you, I know, have experience with students who fall, students who need to fall. You all know the importance of stepping back and letting people learn and not getting right in people's faces and saving them. I have some very good teachers in this room tonight who have helped me learn this lesson. But it all requires a lot of energy, a lot of energy. Again, to instruct calls for energy, and I'd like to go back and look at the line, and to remain almost silent but watchful and helpful while students instruct themselves calls for even greater energy. This really is what it means to be a teacher, because what we do as teachers, I think, is we bring in materials, we construct opportunities for learning, but it's us who provide who provide the energy in the room. And that special energy that allows us to step back far enough to let people learn, to let people fall, but not hard, not hard, because we know both that there are times when people call out for help and times that they don't, and we need to learn the difference. So back to building the body and back to all of the other things I've been talking about, it's all really a matter of building up energy. And on my own personal journey, I'm almost ready to get back to a classroom, to teaching again. And it's a journey that continues, and it's a journey about developing energy along the way. A couple of other things that I've learned and have been doing these past months that have been very helpful for me is thinking back to my teachers and thanking them, even the ones who've, like Sid Corman here, who is one of my most powerful teachers in my life. The poet Sid Corman was a very special man to me. He passed away in 2003. But as I was walking and spending a lot of time alone, I found myself thinking of him and thinking of other teachers that I've had and the things that I've learned from them. And though it's no longer possible to thank them in person, I found that I started a thank you journal. That this is the first time I've mentioned it out loud, but I started a thank you journal and thanking my teachers for the things they've taught me over the years. And sometimes the entry is a page, sometimes the entry is a couple of pages. But in the process of doing this, I found it not only to be very healing, but also I 30 years later, I learned a lesson from Winston Fuller, who was my poetry teacher in college. It finally clicked in my head just by the process of writing down and saying thank you to them. So another way to unstick yourself if you need to move forward in some way is spend some time with a thank you journal or whatever way is appropriate for you, reflecting on and thanking with gratitude the teachers from your life. And listen. And many of you know that I'm often a big talker, and I hate tonight to really just have the whole floor while you sit back wherever you are in the world and listen to me. But this is my dad here, 82. It's on his birthday. We were out for a walk in New York State. And when I was there, I found that my dad at 82, he's got all these stories he wants to tell. And some of them are the same stories again and again. My dad's never taught a class in his life. And he looks at me and he goes, Chuck, teaching is 90% listening. It was a quote from my dad again. I looked at him. I said, where did you learn that? How did you learn that? He said, because you've been listening to me. And so I'm trying, one of the things I'm trying to do more also is learn to listen. I need to listen to people, and as I'm not very good at it sometimes. I'm not a good listener. But I'm working on it, and I find that the more, this is something that I practice now, is learning to listen. But I find if I step back a little farther, and I don't really need to give my opinion all the time, and I can listen to what people say and just let them talk. Let them talk. And over the years, I found this to be true with students too. Just let them talk. Just listen to what they have to say. Don't try to correct. Don't try to teach. Just listen. And I think my dad is right. Teaching probably is 90% listening. But when we get to a place in our career or in our life when we're just harried and busy and weak and have fallen, one of those trees that have fallen down, it's hard to listen because we all these thoughts in our head going around, and we're so much concentrating on our own survival that it's difficult to listen. So listen and read. Read outside of the field, and some of the things that I've been reading, I've mentioned, and you've seen it in quotes. And I haven't. Please forgive me, but I have not read a methodology book. I have not read any journals. I've not read anything in our field except some of your blog posts for the past year almost. But I have gotten back to reading about poetry, reading about writing, reading about people, memoirs especially. The 3 books I can highly recommend are Anne Lamott's Help, Thanks, Wow, an incredible book. She comes from a Christian perspective, but she writes in a way that's very accessible to everyone. And she says that as teachers, as learners, as people, there are only 3 prayers that we have, really. One is help, one is thanks, and one is wow. Great book. Wild Mind by Natalie Goldberg, or The True Secret of Writing. And this book by Cheryl Strait, I cannot recommend highly enough. It's just one day she gets up and she decides to walk the Pacific Crest Trail. And it's all about her own journey of self-discovery. And Cheryl Strait's a writer. She's not a teacher, but in some way, it's all about teaching. So pick those books up if you can. But read to recover, discover, and uncover. And I've been using a notebook, and I've been using the notes feature on my Mac to just make quotes and I didn't feel like really, except for the teacher thank you journal, I haven't really felt like keeping a journal of my own. But I've been making a journal of quotes, and a lot of the things that I've mentioned tonight are things that have come up in the past months through my reading. But just spend some time. It's a good way to be alone and read and discover and then uncover and find new ways forward as a teacher. And you find these things in all kinds of interesting places. So there are truths. There are truths about being a teacher, about being a person, about becoming a teacher, because one of the themes of my life as a teacher, now 30 years into it, is that we never, ever become a teacher. We are always in the process of becoming a teacher. Go back. Someone said they'd like to see the slides. It's help, thanks. Well, I'll go back to this at the end, if that's okay. Hold on. These truths. We never become. We never finish. We're always in the process of becoming a better teacher. And I see all the people in this room, everyone here is a teacher, a teacher. We're not teachers because it's some job we do. It's not, we're not teachers because, we can't think of anything else to do. We're teachers. And we could not be anything else, I don't think. One of the things my teacher, Sid Corman, told me one day, because he is a man who was working at Doshisha University for many years, but then, for similar reasons to the reason I quit my job at my university, he stopped. But he couldn't stop being a teacher, so he decided that every day from 10 o'clock until 4 o'clock, or was it 9 to 5, I can't really remember, he would sit in a coffee shop in Kyoto, Japan, and that was his office. And anybody who wanted to come and learn with him or talk with him or be with him and teach and learn together was very welcome to do so. And I did. He said to me, Chuck, you don't need to be in a classroom to teach. You don't need to be in a school to learn. This is absolutely true. So all of you here are teachers. All of you are in process, are very active and working to become better teachers. So this last quote, again from Anne Lamott, who says, you can't get to any of these truths by sitting in a field smiling beatifically. That's me down there sitting in this field smiling beatifically early on in my journey. Avoiding your anger and damage and grief. Your anger and damage and grief are the way to the truth. These words are powerful words, anger, damage, grief. But if you're ever in a situation where you lose a job, where you're forced out of a position, where you need to really reevaluate who you are as a teacher, these words and feelings do come up. Feelings of anger, feelings of damage, feelings of grief. And it's all about facing them and working through them and developing a practice and moving forward. So in the second sentence, she says, your anger and damage and grief are a way to the truth. We don't have much truth to express unless we have gone into those rooms and closets and woods and abysses that we were told not to go into. Not to go into. Why wouldn't we go into those rooms? Well, the pendulum swings back and forth in education, and I think for some time we were in our field taught to avoid pain, taught to avoid looking at things really deeply. The communicative approach, which has done so much to bring language teaching forward, has also had detrimental effects, I think, by there's a feel-good mentality that I don't think is always that healthy. We're told not to look too deeply into dark places. That's wrong, I found. But we do need to look into those places and to go out into the forest and to dig deep into ourselves. Because when we have gone in and looked around for a long while, just breathing and finally taking it in, then we will be able to speak in our own voice and to stay in the present moment, and that moment is home. So tonight, here I am in my own voice, my authentic voice, speaking to you in the present moment. And I'm very happy to have been able to share with you tonight. And I thank BELTA for inviting me to talk. And it's been a very nice, not just nice, it's been a great experience for me to say many of these things out loud, which I've just internalized for the past months. So thanks for coming and being with me in this present moment. So after this, I'm going back into my Facebook sabbatical for a while yet. back away from Twitter and social media, but I'll be back again. In fact, I'll be speaking next week at the RS Khan conference, giving a short keynote on Saturday the 12th, and it'd be great to see some of you there. Otherwise, I'm here and just quiet in my own way again, working. Thank you, Sasha. Welcome back. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming, everyone, and I really appreciate it.
So thank you very much, Chuck. That was fantastic. And thanks for stepping out of the forest for a moment. We really appreciate it.
No, it's been great. Thank you.
If anyone has any questions or comments you'd like to make to Chuck, feel free to put them in the comments, the chat box now. He's given you some reading material. I'm sure, as Julie says, she's probably heading over to Amazon at the moment to to order some things. If I could ask you something, Chuck.
Sure.
I mean, you touched on this a bit, but I'd like to hear what you say about if a teacher's in some kind of situation where they're having doubts, or even from doubts to a crisis point, so, somewhere on that spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
And they're not sure how to process what's happening to them. What would you recommend as a first step? What do you think is the first thing they should do before they can begin to take the path with the heart, as you say?
Find somebody to talk to. Find somebody that you can trust, that you can really share with what's going on with you. You might want to just step back a little bit from I'm about to say the noise of the PLN, but I don't mean to be detrimental about that at all. But to find someone there, not the whole group, but someone you can talk to, and to help reevaluate, and to give yourself some time too, as well. I mean, to just remove yourself from the situation a little bit. And I would really recommend a practice of some kind. I mean, because it does help clear the mind, and it does help to re-energize, as well. But I've come very close to talking about depression, because depression is something that's amazing to me, that over the years I've run into so many people in our field who are depressed, clinically depressed. And one of the reasons I think many people, including myself, have taught or became teachers is because we need to get out into the world and out of ourselves a little bit. So we want to be careful not to isolate ourselves too much, and I wouldn't recommend the forest to everyone. It's worked for me. And one thing I want to point out is I was home every night. I didn't go too far out into the forest, and I came back in again. But find someone to talk to share with, and get help if you need it.
Yeah. No, excellent advice. And I think as a very active member of the PLN, I understand what you mean by the noise. But I don't think
love
that
the PLN.
I don't think that noise is the noise of the PLN necessarily, but just the noise of the internet.
Well, that's it. It's the noise of the internet.
Communication. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's hard not to use the internet without it being noise, I think.
No, it's true. And I was very consciously off, not even looking at Facebook for these 40 days or 50 days rather. And it was very difficult at first, not to look because that's where I get my source of information for a lot of things. But after about a week, it went away. And when I made a post 2 days ago to mention about your invitation to be here tonight, I started to look and I had to turn it back off again because it's so noisy. And it's not the PLN, you're right, it's the internet.
Yeah, yeah. You can go down the wormhole.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. We have a question here from Jeffrey
Yeah.
in Turkey. Says a quote from Matthew Arnold's The Study of Poetry. More and more
Hmm.
mankind will discover that we have to turn to poetry to interpret life for us, to console us, to sustain us. I know you would agree with Arnold, but why is this?
Could you read that one more time?
Sure, if you like. I'll try and be more poetic. Um, more and more, mankind will discover that we have to turn to poetry to interpret life for us, to console us, to sustain us. I know you would agree with Matthew Arnold, but why is this?
I'm going to get a book and hold it up.
Okay.
I wonder if Gregory knows this. It's another Gregory, or this is Gregory Orr. Jeffrey knows this. Gregory Orr, Poetry as Survival. I guess I can't really see it there. Poetry as Survival. Literature, fiction, poetry, it's very sustaining. It gets at the heart of who we are as people. And I really recommend this book. I'll type it into the chat. It's called Poetry as Survival by Gregory Orr. And it's really all about how poetry is a life source for us. Gregory Orr. Do you know that, Jeffrey? Gregory Orr is a poet who had some horrible things happen to him as a young man. And in fact, he accidentally killed his brother with a shotgun. And they were hunting, and it's haunted him obviously his entire life. And he went into some very deep depressions and turned to poetry for survival. Became a poet to work things out in his head. And this book is really about the powers of poetry to help us overcome all kinds of different things. I think Matthew Arnold's right in the sense that I'm having a hard time answering. I just know he's right. And I didn't. I'll just tell a quick story. I didn't come to Japan to be a teacher. At first, I came to Japan to be a poet because I studied poetry in university, and I wanted to be a poet, not a teacher. And I found that being a poet is not a sustainable way to live a life, and also discovered I'm not a very good poet. But so I became a teacher. And so for a long time in my life, there was these two things going on. There was the poetry part of my life, and then there was the teaching part of my life. And my poet friends would go, are you still teaching? What are you doing with that teaching business? When are you going to get back to like real art, real life? And increasingly, I discovered that, teaching is art, teaching is life, it is poetry. And what's been happening to me the past several years is that these two parts of my life have started to come together, poetry and teaching. It's all sort of becoming a whole. And I'm coming back to a lot of the poetry that I knew as a younger man, and this is helping me move forward in my teaching, in my life. I've been recently, some of you saw me in different presentations use a poem by Sid Corman, As Long Ago As Now, You Be My Monument. So, yeah, I don't think this is really answering the question, but poetry is sustaining. And I think that at a certain time in all of our lives, we do get back more to poetry, and if we could extend that a bit more to art and find that it does come and help us blend and help us look at things more holistically, at least. I'm going to think about this, Jeffrey, and Rachel later. Great question.
An excellent question. Okay, thank you very much, Chuck. Um, so I'd like to thank everyone for coming to this BELTA webinar, and of course I'd like to thank Chuck for that inspiring and fascinating presentation. If you'd like to know more about BELTA, remember to visit our website, beltabelgium.com, our Facebook and our Twitter pages, and we'll see you on the 3rd of November when we'll be joined by Claire Hart. Okay, so thanks, Chuck, and thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.